Welcome to Busted Speakers. I'm Alex, and I'm joined today by Cam.
Hi.
And today we're reviewing, I think, the fourth album by Sturgill Simpson, Sound and Fury. Uh, this is like released in conjunction with a short film on Netflix, also called Sound and Fury. And well, right off the bat, I'd like to say, even though Sturgill Simpson's kind of made his name as like a country artist, this album is not country, really. I feel like, I don't know, since I'm not from the States, I don't know if it's actually offensive or like wrong to say this, but he still kind of has a country voice, but because it's not country, it felt more like Southern soul, Southern rock to me more than anything else for the majority of
Yeah, like
this.
people are throwing around boogie rock as a term for it. I haven't really listened to a whole lot of that myself. Boogie rock or boogie or anything
A
else.
lot of boogie rock is like throwaway, although still kind of good 70s rock that just somewhere in between blues and hard rock, I'd say.
Yeah, like ZZ Top seems to be the main point of comparison for this album, but I've never really listened to any of them.
I've also heard, mainly probably because of the production qualities, which they seem to be similar to, like this is like what the Black Keys should be doing nowadays, which I've not heard the Black Keys' most recent album, Let's Rock, so I don't know what they're doing nowadays, but based on some earlier albums, I guess that's a fair comparison. I'd like to say like, I mainly enjoyed this album, to be honest. If I'm looking for a straight, all guns blazing, rocking album, I mean, I'm probably going to gravitate to this one more than a lot of other albums that came out this year. It's tight, the songs are there. I really like the singing. There's a decent amount of variety within the songs, even while staying sort of a sort of general rock basis. And yeah, I don't have really much complaints about this. I could see some people who were yearning for another straight country album from Sturgill might be a little bit unhappy with this, but personally, I'm really happy with this album.
Yeah, I'm really surprised at the reception it's received so far, just because of Sturgill's reputation and his history as a boundary pushing country artist. Have you heard his first three albums?
I have, and I quite enjoy all of them, especially his second album, Metamodern Sounds in Country Music.
So this is definitely a left turn for him. But at the same time, it makes sense because you read all the reviews and they all say stuff like he's a country iconoclast. He doesn't really care about sticking to formulas and trends, anything like that, obviously, because when I heard this album was supposed to be his version of rock accentuated by synthesizers, I was afraid that he was gonna go totally bro country on us or bro step or whatever. But everything in here it's all done really tastefully. It's not like he just recorded country rock songs and then replaced all the choruses with drops or anything like that. It's just synth accoutrements.
And even his last album, A Sailor's Guide to Earth, I'd say it's mainly a country album, but even some songs on that, like Brace for Impact, Live a Little, which might still be my favourite song by him, just as a little side note, that was already kind of breaking away from the general normal country song. He was already proven himself quite a country iconoclast on that one. And going on to the synths, how did you feel about them? Because I did not expect them, but on the first few listens, I wasn't really digging them. But the more I listened to it, the more I was getting into them, and they didn't feel as out of place, and became quite a nice, different set of like textures on the album.
I didn't really have a problem with the synths at first. For me, the bigger sticking point was the production style of it. It's extremely dense and layered, and the vocals are buried pretty deep. So the synths were actually kind of something that I was glad were there because they were like a little bit easier to follow.
I would agree because they're actually quite high in the mix whenever they appear, and they don't appear that often. They're kind of scattered around, usually in between guitar solos and verses. They're not really, never any synth solos, obviously.
Yeah, and it's not like like Rush style prog where it's like hard rock and then they bring out the synthesizers to carry things away for minutes on end or whatever.
No, and it's not even like Van Halen, who just didn't have any guitars and just had synths on some songs. They're there, they're nice, they're quite melodic sounding, which is quite a nice change of pace. It works well on songs like All Said and Done, which are quite lighter in tone anyway. briefly looking at our favourite songs, I guess, just a few of them. At least my favourite, and the one that I think was the most radical change and departure, was Make Art, Not Friends.
Yep, definitely.
The opening to this is like, okay, it's not techno, it's nothing to do with electronic music, even the synths don't suggest that. But the like minute and a half intro to this, just leading up to something big, kind of felt like a almost electronic beat to me, leading up to something. It really kicks in and is really, really good once it gets going. Really good guitar riffs and chords here. It was a departure, and Sturgill really sings the hell out of this, even buried under the production, I'd say.
Yeah, that was definitely a standout for me. And if we can get into themes a little bit,
Okay, yeah, sure.
the big thing about this album, the common party line about it is that it's, it's just an album of him sticking it to the country industry, whether you want to call it Nashville or whatever, and just saying, it's all BS, it's all about image. Like the song A Good Look is entirely about that. And all that is, just standard disillusionment with the entertainment industry. If you really wanted to be cynical about it, you could say that it's just generic.
So the song Make Art Not Friends is like, that's what they value him for, is to make the music, but don't have any real connections within the music. You're there to make art, not friends.
Yeah, and a couple of the songs this one included definitely suggest that the theme runs a little bit deeper for Sturgill than just, writing a middle finger to Nashville. It seems like there's actually some kind of, like, depression fueling this.
Yeah, I kind of felt that too. It's like very resigned songs, very introspective, and just trying to make sense of the position he's in, because he was heralded as like the big new country boy of the genre, like the one who's going to save it. How do you reconcile those thoughts? How do you even come to terms with that? And I feel like this album probably does do that for Sturgill, at least a little bit, while simultaneously also being a really good rock album rather than country. I feel like that's the biggest like middle finger to the industry, or the country side of the industry, is that this is not country.
So I don't know about you, Alex, but I actually thought that I wasn't going to like this album after the first listen, because the first time I just thought this is a total noise wall. Like, I don't know if it's technically brick walled, but my initial impression of it was this is completely impenetrable. I don't remember any of the guitar lines. I don't remember much of the melodies. I don't remember any of the synths really standing out. And I just thought, okay, this is not that good. But on repeated listens, and especially after watching the movie, it started to open up. I think the version on the movie might be mixed slightly differently, which I wouldn't say is a bad thing.
No, it might be just to fit in a movie context.
Yeah. And the album just definitely rewards repeated listens, so that on even my second listen, I started to realize, okay, no, there's some songs on here that are slower, that are quieter, and those are the ones that I think tend to have more meaning than just, the middle finger to the country industry, like I've been saying. What did you think?
Well, I was actually surprised at the genre change, mainly on my first listen. It was hard to like understand fully what he was going for, but the way I looked at it, it was like it was a good intro, then like two solid songs. I'll admit, A Good Look was like, I don't know what to do with this the first listen. It was like an impenetrable noise, hard to even make out any of the vocals and lyrics. Or it was hard to at least make them out on the first listen. And even some songs now are still a little bit hard to wrap my head around. Like Last Man Standing still feels like it is like a rockabilly throwback, but it still feels like a more of a wallop to the senses and too much energy for its own good, in a way, even though I kind of like it now. But over the listens, I would say I got more used to it. And for me too, watching the film definitely helped piece the songs apart. Because this one thing with this album is that the songs, I think you were telling me once, they don't really end as such. And it's hard to maybe make them out. If you're not paying very close scrutinous attention, it's kind of hard to make them out.
Apparently, the whole thing is, like, you can probably get this from the intro of Ronin, but the whole thing is, like, he's going through a radio, just listening to different songs. But they don't really keep up that aesthetic. It only happens like with, the first track, the last track, and then a couple more in between, and the rest just like smash cut from one song to the next.
That part of the concept feels like it was done mainly to coincide with the film and kind of serve as a part of the album, although not especially feel like confined by it, if you know what I mean. Okay, some quick thoughts on the film. I've only seen it once, so I'm probably given very, very loose first impressions more than anything here. It's not actually the first time Sturgill's done anything related with film. There was a song which was still like a normal Sturgill kind of country song he released earlier this year, which was the theme song to the Jim Jarmusch film The Dead Don't Die, which was like the inner theme song of that film. So he's worked his music into films before. So while this wasn't a complete departure, the fact he had a whole anime film with, I believe, some of the industry's best people in it working on this film was quite surprising, and I didn't really know what to expect, and I still kind of don't know what I watched. What were your impressions of it?
So it's definitely weird. It's genre hopping. It doesn't necessarily tell a single coherent story. It definitely doesn't tell it in sequence, whatever story it does. And you could definitely argue that it's derivative. The main story is clearly inspired by Fury Road, which is pretty much the template for post-apocalyptica these days.
I suppose so. That film was a big deal. My favourite sequence, I hate to say it, was like weird. It was completely anime, albeit like sort of weird 3D anime, but then it has weird live action parts as well. Like there's a part where a woman in a hazmat suit skateboards around finding weird items from a post-apocalyptic city and brings them back to her lair. That whole sequence was quite nice. I quite like that. And it was backed by my favourite song, Make Art Not Friends. That was a nice added bonus. I especially like that part. The animation's really good throughout, I'd say that. Like, really, really good. Really expressive people and faces here. Like you say, the story's not exactly coherent. Like, I feel like they, without giving the plot away, they cut the, like, main villainous threat, the two bad guys who destroyed the protagonist's, village. They cut them short to fit a lyric of two heads in a duffel bag in a good look, which appears very early on. In essence, it felt like a bit like an anthology film of music videos tied loosely together to fit the album, but done pretty well at that, I'd say.
Yeah, that's definitely the best way to think about it. Like, you've got the main story of the samurai who, his home is destroyed by these two people who... I watched this with my wife, who knows a lot more about anime than I do.
Yeah.
And as we were watching, she's thinking very intensely, and then she just says, the villains, are business and pleasure.
Oh, yeah, because the more fat one was, like, clearly more pleasure. Wow, I never even thought of it that way, man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because the business one apparently had, like, business on his mech's license plate or something like that. And so she just put the pieces together, and I didn't even see that license plate. The main story is the samurai whose village is destroyed, and presumably the woman is his daughter, and she gets kidnapped, and so he goes to rescue her. She escapes, and then comes back to wreak revenge on business and pleasure. And yeah, then you've got all those other clips in between of, like, the woman in the hazmat suit, one of somebody trying to get into... I think they're, like, trying to get into a bomb shelter as the bomb is falling.
Yeah, that one was very, very weird. It was like one escaped and all others died. I was very confused by that one. I do not think that was meant to be taken literally or anything. I was a bit confused by that one, honestly.
Yeah, so it's a film that is meant to be more of an experience than a narrative. And if you're okay with that, if you're on board with what Sturgill is doing, then it'll probably work for you better. But if you just can't stand how derivative it is and how, unoriginal the story might seem, and the fact that the style can't sit still, you're probably not going to like it.
Yeah, it's good to have. It's nice it's there. It almost feels like, because Tom York on his album Anima had a little Netflix short film as well. It almost feels like a new promotional item to promote an album these days, or more than anything.
Yeah, but apparently this one cost in the multi-millions, so I don't think anyone's going to be following Sturgill's template.
No, I still supremely don't know how he managed to create the budget and the wherewithal to make this. It's cool he did. It's cool he got a really crack team to animate this beautifully, I must be said. A for effort, kind of A for execution, even if it's not going to be for you. It was a cool film to go with a pretty cool album, I'd say. Okay, so for the album, I'd give it maybe 7.5 to 8 out of 10 range. It's a lot of great songs, most of which I'll definitely listen to a lot more in the future. It works well as an album, even if the songs don't exactly... They end, but they don't finish naturally. It's very weird. They work well as an album and as songs separated. It's going to be one I'm going to listen to quite a bit the rest of the year and maybe next year too. I'd just say it's a pretty good continuation of Sturgill's discography, I'd say.
And I'm also going to give it a 7. Like I said, it takes a good while to open up unless you're, really in the mood for some, good hard rock, that the kind of which we don't really see these days, especially not from mainstream artists, and especially not from artists who are trying to change their sound just because they want to.
For the film, I'd give it a 6 out of 10. I did like it. A 6 out of 10 is a good score from me, but especially factor in rewatchability, it might be good to rewatch a few times just to get a better idea about it, because it is short. The genre hopping within the film, it doesn't make it one of my favourites, but yeah, it's a nice one to have.
Hey, I think I'll also give it a 6. If somebody had to make this movie or release an album and a movie in conjunction like this, I'm glad it was Sturgill. I'm glad he had an idea that he wanted to bring to life, and that he had something he wanted to say, even if it's not the most unique thing to say and not the most original way to say it. But it all came together for the most part.
Yeah, I think that's our thoughts for Sound and Fury by Sturgill Simpson. Thanks for listening, guys, and we're glad to be back.